Okay, how about a hardwood? For a hardwood, I'm going to need some brown for the trunk and the branches. And I'm actually going to want three real distinctive color changes in the green. I'm going to want a dark, kind of a medium, and then I'm going to mix this to become a real light green, and I'll show you how to do that. So when you're looking at the color wheel, of course I added red to this one. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit of, if I had the green and add yellow to it, I can see that I get kind of a yellowy green, and that's what I want to do. So I'm going to add a little bit, add orange to it. I told you the wrong thing. I'm going to get kind of something in the middle. So I've got the green. I'm going to add a little bit of orange to that to make it more of a yellowy orange. Might add even a little bit more. Okay, so I've got three distinctive colors there. You can see a light, and a medium, and then my dark. And you could even have more if you wanted to, because you can make as many different shades as you want, but that's what I'm going to start with. All right, and then I'm going to get a brown. I'm going to use one of my browns over here. And brown is a neutral, so you've probably noticed neutrals are not on the color wheel. So the way I'm going to change the color of that particular one is by adding water to it. So I'm going to drip a little bit of water, and I'll make it a little lighter that way. Let's see, I can do a light brown, and I can do a dark brown. I can make it darker by adding water also. So now I have several different shades of brown here that I use, and so I know you don't have this luxury, but I'm going to mix a little bit of this reddish burnt umber with mine, just to change it, just so it's not quite as a flat brown. Okay, so I start with the trunk, and I don't do wet on wet. I use a wet on dry. So I'm going to get my brush pretty filled with it. My brush is fairly wet, but I'm going to want to use the tip of my brush again, and I'm still using that 6. Now you could use a smaller brush for this part if you want to, and particularly if you have a smaller tree. I kind of penciled in where I'm going to want my tree, because I would do that probably if I was painting a landscape. I'll explain more about that on Wednesday when we come. But remember that the base of the tree generally kind of spreads out like that a little bit. And then I'm going to make the beginning of a branch, but I'm not going all the way up. You're only going to be able to see where the branch begins. Then I'll be adding to this, but if I were to go ahead and draw branches all the way up and then tried to add leaves, the leaves would not cover those branches, and so it would look like a mistake. It would look like I tried to stick a bunch of leaves on top of it. So that's not what so I'm going to do it like this. And then I'm going to add a few, kind of peeking through the trees, the branches up here perhaps. You can do it however you want, but this is just, more than likely you're going to be able to see a few branches here and there. And you want to think different trees, and I kind of ran out of room up here at the top, but different trees have different shapes. So some of them may be kind of a pear-shaped, some may be more, come out this way a little bit. We'll pretend that one does. I don't know my trees very well, but anyway, it's a hardwood. So before I go to the next step, I'm going to need to let that dry. Okay, let's add some leaves here to the hardwood tree. So as I've said before, you kind of always want to start with the lightest color that you're going to use. So I'm going to use the lightest green that I have first, because if I use a dark green first, going over it with a light green, I won't be able to see anything, but the opposite would work. So I'm going to get a wet brush, not sopping, it's not dripping, but it is pretty wet, and I'm going to get this and I'm just going to dab around. Now the paint will pretty much stay wherever you dab. It's not like going to go running down the paper generally unless you hold the paper up, which I'm not going to do. Okay, so I'm going to kind of dab. Notice I'm trying to leave some white space here and there and dabbing around the thing, but I'm not worrying about it too much because it's a tree and the leaves, I'm not trying to make a real uniform edge or anything like that because the leaves don't look like that usually. Okay, so I've got that one, that layer. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit, and then I'm going to add the next darker green to it. Okay, and they will meld a little bit, so I don't want my paintbrush to be sopping wet or I'll get that halo effect a lot. But I'm going to go back and add some of this in here. Now if I was painting a fall tree, I would add a few dabs here and there. I'm not going to try to draw leaves because that's not the look that I prefer. I kind of prefer a little looser look to it. Now you might want to be real detailed, but I'm going to add these. So I've added, so you can still see a little bit of the lighter green showing through, which gives it kind of a highlights, kind of gives it, looks like the sun's shining on it a little bit. And if I knew the sun was, say, shining from this side, then I might make it a little bit lighter over on this side and that sort of thing. But I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just kind of making a tree. Okay, I'm going to let that dry a little bit more before I add the darkest green. And the darkest green is usually, remember, going to be a shadow, so it will be kind of on the underside. You want to make it look like it's on the underside of leaves. Okay, now that this is dry, I'm going to add a little bit of this darker green for some highlights. I'm going to water it down a little bit, not too watery, and I'm going to kind of you can even take this and kind of dab it if you want to kind of get a little bit darker in here. You can see it's I kind of want it to look kind of, I guess, the fluffy. So I'm kind of doing almost a semicircle kind of thing with it, like that, which kind of, this is already really wet, so it's just going to kind of blend in there. But okay. I'm going to go back and add some of the other colors to it on top. Even straight out of my palette some. careful not to just overwork it too much, which I have a tendency to do. Okay, I'm going to stop there. While that's drying, I'm going to add a little bit, and we're going to go back in a minute on these branches that I kind of covered up a little bit. But this is just a flat brown, and I want to add a little bit of dimension for that. So I'm going to kind of pretend the sun is coming from this side. I'm going to get a little bit darker brown. Now, if you wanted to, you can try mixing like a little bit of black with your brown, or something like that, to get that same look as a darker brown like that. I'm going to get kind of a little bit drier brush for this, and I'm going to kind of just lightly go down the side of my, I'm going to hit the V's of the branch too, like that. And this dries, we're going to go back up here, and that was still wet, so and I could even go back with the black a little bit more right along here, right around the very edge, to give it a little bit more, which at first to your eye kind of feels really sharp, but remember that everything dries darker in watercolor, I mean lighter in watercolor, so it may seem dark right now, but as you play with it, it will, I mean, as it dries, it will darken up a little bit. Okay. Okay, I think this is dry enough to go ahead and add these little branches in, so I'm going to go back over these just a little bit so that you can see them a lot, because you just would see, you know, if you look at a full spring, summer tree, it's just, you're just going to see a little hint of the branches here and there. You're not going to see the whole branch generally, unless it's winter, and then that's a different kind of tree, and we can do that too if you'd like. Okay, so I kind of did a lot of them, but that kind of gives you an idea. All right, you can add more. You can layer this. Since it's dry, I could add a little bit darker layer to it if I want to define it a little bit. And there's our hardwood.